United States of America has recently become more practical on global threats posed by China, who is slowly and gradually threatening its strategic national defense in Alaska and Arctic region. With that realization, US on June 9th announced the creation of new Department of Defense Center. The Ted Stevens Center for Arctic Security Studies, as it is being named, will be the sixth such regional center for the department. In this video, I will briefly delve why US feel threatened in Arctic by a strange entry of a relatively outside player, China. Stay tuned. Alaska sits astride the Bering Strait choke point and the Great Circle routes between the two continents, North America and Asia. The Great Circle routes not only shortens the air and sea lanes of communications between the two continents, but also for the missiles. However, with climate change, the retreat of ice coverage in the Arctic Ocean has opened up the potential for shipping along the Northern Sea Route and the fabled Northwest Passage. The Northern Sea Route parallels Russia's Arctic coastline, as much of it within the country's exclusive economic zone. Moreover, Russia is facilitating passage through the use of its large icebreaker fleet. Russia charges toll passage through that route. With melting ice, Alaska's position on the east side of the Bering Strait places the state in a central position on the choke point of both routes. With increasing human activity and climate change, the conflict in the region will rise. According to US Army Journal, Army University Press, what makes the Great Circle route good for shipping also makes it the preferred route for the employment of missiles aimed at North America. But according to sources, entry of China and the pacing Chinese threat in the region has made US to establish a TED Center for the study of conflicts.
The Secretary is proud to announce today the establishment of a sixth Defense Department Regional Center. This will be the Ted Stevens Center for Arctic Security Studies.
According to US Army University Press, there are across the entire Arctic oil, gas, coal, rare earth metals, and fisheries. It is estimated that 13% of the undiscovered oil and 30% of the gas worldwide is in the region, along with a host of other resources. As a result, Arctic nations are very interested in tapping those to facilitate economic growth and generate revenues for their countries. The retreat of sea ice and glacial melt is making these resources more accessible to Arctic and interested near Arctic nations like China. The center's focus will support US interim national security strategy guidance and will work with partner nations to ensure that a stable, rule-based order in the Arctic will benefit the United States and all Arctic nations, including Canada, Denmark, Finland, Iceland, Norway, Russia, Sweden, and the United States, the Department of Defense press release said.
The Ted Stevens Center will provide a new venue to collaborate across the U.S. government and with our allies and partners to advance shared interests for a peaceful and prosperous Arctic.
U.S. unease lies in greater Russia-China Cooperation for Northern Sea Route. Not long back, Russia's VEB and China's CDB has signed an agreement of $9.5 billion or 600 billion rubles. US call attention to China's unrelenting efforts to become the dominant player on the Northern Sea Route because, first, China launched its first domestically produced icebreaker for sea trials. Other such vessels are in the works, which will enable Beijing to shepherd ships in the Arctic without having to rely on Russian icebreakers. Second, in St. Petersburg, Russia and Chinese companies signed an accord making China an increasingly important supplier of liquefied natural gas carriers and other transit ships for this route. And third, port officials in Scandinavia are more and more looking towards China for the development of infrastructure that will allow for the dramatic expansion of Chinese-European trade.
The Defense Department regional centers are international academic venues for bilateral and multilateral research, communication, and training, with the goal of building strong, sustainable international networks of security leaders.
With growing adversarial overlapping claims made under the auspices of United Nations and China's rhetoric not to accept such verdicts as observed in other parts of the world to judgments under UN Convention on the Laws of the Sea fuels potential future conflicts. And that is the reason that Ted Stevens Center will strive to fulfill the gap. DoD says the center's focus will support US interim national security strategy guidance and will work with partner nations to ensure that a stable, rule-based order in the Arctic will benefit the United States and all Arctic nations, including Canada, Denmark, Finland, Iceland, Norway, Russia, Sweden, and the United States. Like existing Defense Department regional centers, the Ted Stevens Center for Arctic Security Studies will fall under the oversight and management of the Undersecretary of Defense for Policy. Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin said the center will facilitate close partnerships between the US and Arctic nations with shared values. The center will support the US Interim National Security Strategic Guidance Direction to work with like-minded partners and across the interagency to pool our collective strength and advance shared interests, Austin said. It will address the need for US engagement and international cooperation to strengthen the rule-based order in the region and tackle shared challenges such as climate change. Other regional centers include the George C. Marshall European Center for Security Studies in Germany, the Daniel K. Inouye Asia Pacific Center for Security Studies in Hawaii, as well as the William J. Parry Center for Hemispheric Defense Studies, the African Center for Strategic Studies, and the Near East South Asia Center for Strategic Studies, all three of which are in Washington, D.C. DoD press statement says, right now no location has been chosen for the new Arctic Center. Hope you like the video. If yes, please do share, like and subscribe National Defense. Thanks for watching. Jai Hind, Vande Mataram.